Joined from New South Wales of Hunter Valley by the voice of the people here on Credlin, 2GB's radio host, Luke Grant. Lots to talk about, Luke. Let's get into National Cabinet. Ad campaign, we're told, kicking off on Sunday. A bring forward of Pfizer vaccines. That was announced today. Not extra Pfizer vaccines, but we don't have to wait till October. They'll really start to roll out from about 19th of July, I think it is. And home quarantine to be trialled in South Australia. What did you make of all of this?
Well, I think they're good stories. They're good news stories. I would have thought, given the shellacking the PM's got over this alleged slow vaccine rollout, when the Europeans held back 3,000 doses, et cetera, no one was dying here, so no one saw a massive need to get the vaccine here. I would have thought this bring forward is a really good story, because everyone you listen to in health seems to fall back on the fact that once we get more people vaccinated, we'll be in a much better position. I mean, even Gladys today said we can't live with this Delta strain until we have a high number of people vaccinated. So that's a really good thing. So too is home quarantine. I mean, the whole problem with home quarantine is whether you can trust the people or not. That is, I'm going to go home and stay home and not go anywhere. So I'm glad we're trying that. I think that's a really good thing. Gee, we're hard on ourselves sometimes. I really don't know why we have to look at the negative in every instance. I thought today's National Cabinet seemingly made some ground.
Look, you're spot on, and I think I'd be very happy with home quarantine. I think it can only be for those that are vaccinated. We've got issues, as you can see in Sydney, that people, I think you had a soft lockdown, if I can say that, coming from Victoria. If you had a softer lockdown, and if everyone had done what they were supposed to do, perhaps you wouldn't need the hard lockdown, but you're certainly in a hard lockdown as at 5 o'clock tonight. Give me a sense of the politics. I'm going to get into detail with a professor of infectious diseases in a moment, but the politics of it, Sydney siders perhaps souring on Gladys Berejiklian, or do they accept that they have to be here? What are you hearing?
I think we're slowly accepting the reality that we have to be here. Don't forget, New South Wales was the place where COVID doesn't really go there. And if it goes there, you just keep doing what you normally do and there's no drama. Well, 44 cases today, 38 yesterday, 30-something earlier in the week. I mean, it's got to the point now where it's pretty serious. And we've been fairly relaxed about it, I think, for those very good reasons. The Premier's done a good job. But, we have to play by the rules. It's not so much a walk of shame, but a reality that if the advice is, and we don't see the advice, so we can't question it, if the advice is that it's more transmissible, then, we've just got to stay home, go to work if you're essential, and then come home and stay home. And people just have to do that. As unpleasant as it might be, it might only be for a week or two. I think you raise a good point, Peter. Maybe this is where Gladys might have been a week or two ago. But I think people are reasonably forgiving of the Premier, at least until this point.
Well, look, they should be. I mean, cheer up. It's only the Delta variant has brought you to your knees. It's not government incompetence. It's not all the calamities that we saw down in Victoria. I think you've done very, very well in New South Wales to date. The Greens were out there today saying that a heavier police presence out in Western Sydney was all racially motivated. What do you make of that?
Joke, absolute joke. And it devalues the important issue that is racism. I mean, don't these people get it? There's police out in an area of Sydney where the Chief Health Officer today said there were a number of concerned people infected who were in the community, moving about the community. Now, this has to be policed, because if people infected aren't out shopping or browsing, whatever they might be doing, we get back to something like zero sooner rather than later. So I wouldn't care if it was in Vaucluse, or I wouldn't care if it was in Manly, and Manly had their lockdown, or the Northern Beaches did. The police are there to do the job for the whole state. The whole country. So what are they to do? Just cross their fingers and hope people do it? No, it hasn't worked. So it's not racist, it's appropriate.
Well, this is an issue that I spoke about on the show earlier in the week. We've had a lot of debate about it, and now we've had John Howard enter the fray today. He says we've got a moral obligation to provide asylum to Afghans who worked alongside Australian troops. Mr Howard says the government should not succumb to narrow legalism and who is granted a visa. Now, As I said, I talked about this at the show. Absolutely. Grant asylum should have been done already to anyone who was a translator, who stood in the line of fire with our troops. I'm not so sure, though, if you were employed by UNICEF or Save the Children to deliver an aid program that we perhaps funded, that's an entitlement to life in Australia. You weren't necessarily in harm's way. You weren't directly employed by us. My concern would be that in another sort of conflict like this, that would mean any program that we put money into and we put millions and millions of dollars into foreign aid, then we are basically saying if you get a job delivering that aid that gives you life in Australia, I'm not so sure that I'm that far addressed, but absolutely translators. What do you think Australians think of that, Luke?
No, I think you are right. And from what I've seen of the feedback that we've got, emails and the like, people agree with that. Look, there's this great Australian thing we like to call the spirit of mateship. If we ask you to get in harm's way, and much of it was formed on the battlefields around the world, if we ask you to get in harm's way, or if you get in harm's way to help the cause, then no question. But that's not just an endless loop of anyone who was loosely associated with whatever theatre of war we're talking about at that time. So there has to be caution, but at the end of the day, if someone's gone at great risk to support our effort, then, it's a tick, way you come, and let's look after these people and embrace their heroism, which is probably what they exhibited, male or female.
All right, I'm going to go on to other issues with my next guest. But before I go, Ash Barty on the weekend, Saturday night, our time, could be a little glimmer of good news that New South Welshmen, Sydney siders in particular, need more than ever. How will she go?
I was thinking about that today. I hope she doesn't do what we see so many Australian champions do, where they just, I don't know, they go MIA for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, and they look up and it's too hard. Then they come back and get close. Then they don't quite get there. But there's something special about her. She seems so much in control. I love what she said after she finished. She said, you know what, that's about as good as I've played. So she's aware of where she is with the sport. So, God, I'll be crossing everything, Peter. I hope we haven't put the mock on her. But we've already had the Demons win. How good. We've got Ash Barty to win, and then the Sydney Roosters as well. And it'll be a great weekend. Lockdown, schmockdown.